Your life won't change until you choose to own it. That's not a slogan, it's a hard truth. No breakthrough comes from waiting for luck, a miracle, or someone else to fix what only you can face. The moment you stop blaming the past, stop waiting for the right time, and start taking full responsibility, that's when your transformation begins. This message is for those who are tired of drifting, who feel stuck, overwhelmed, or quietly frustrated with where they are. And if that's you, then don't just listen once. Come back to this often. Let it sink in. Let it rewire the way you think, speak, and act. This isn't motivation for the moment. It's a blueprint for living with clarity, discipline, and direction. So take a deep breath, hit subscribe if you haven't already, and drop a comment below. I choose to own my life, starting now. Say it out loud. Claim it in the comments. You don't need to explain, just declare it. Then, send this to one person you care about who needs to hear it too. Remember, real change isn't loud. It's daily, it's quiet, and it's yours to own, starting today. Stop waiting, start owning. Your life won't change because you hope it will, or because one day feels more convenient than another. It changes the moment you stop outsourcing your future to luck, other people, or the illusion of perfect timing. Most people stay stuck not because they lack time or talent, but because they keep waiting. Waiting to feel ready, waiting to be less afraid, waiting for someone to notice their efforts or hand them permission to begin. But that waiting quietly becomes a way of avoiding responsibility. You were not made to wait. You were made to respond. Owning your life doesn't mean controlling everything. It means taking responsibility for how you think, what you prioritize, and the direction you choose, especially when nothing outside of you feels supportive. That's where your strength starts to form. Not in the absence of pressure, but in the decision to act anyway. Every time you tell yourself not yet, you give away a piece of your authority. The longer you delay, the more likely you are to believe that change lives somewhere out there, in a better version of your circumstances, instead of in a better version of you. But here's the truth. Nothing external can save you from an internal habit of waiting. You don't need a perfect plan. You don't need a sign. You need to decide. When you own your choices, even the small ones, how you spend your mornings, how you speak to yourself, what you allow into your mental space, you begin to reclaim your life. And that's not just motivational fluff. It's how discipline is built, how personal growth becomes real, and how quiet decisions lead to massive internal shifts. A powerful life isn't created through huge leaps of inspiration. It's carved slowly through daily discipline habits, intentional living, and the refusal to let fear make your schedule. Stoicism teaches that while you can't control the world, you can always control how you respond to it. And in that gap between reaction and response, your freedom lives. Stop trying to control outcomes and start managing your energy, your effort, and your attention. The truth is, most of your life is built in silence. In the invisible moments no one sees, when you choose to rise early, say no to distractions, read instead of scroll, and reflect instead of complain. And when you do this not once, but repeatedly, you begin to transform from someone who hopes life will change to someone who creates that change through consistent identity-based action. Your self-leadership mindset deepens, not by waiting for motivation, but by honoring what you've committed to, even when it's hard. That's how you build emotional self-ownership. That's how you shift from survival mode into strategic stillness, a kind of inner calm that no circumstance can take from you. So stop telling yourself you need more time. What you need is to stop bargaining with the future and start building the present. Make one decision today that reflects the kind of person you're becoming, not because it's big or flashy, but because it honors who you truly are when no one's watching. The world may never clap for your quiet progress, but your future will. Vision without action is just a daydream. You can picture the life you want in vivid color. Imagine the peace, the success, the clarity. But until you commit to walking toward it daily, it remains nothing more than a pleasant escape from the discomfort of the present. Vision alone is not enough. It's easy to mistake dreaming for direction, to feel like thinking about a better future is progress in itself. But progress isn't found in ideas, it's built in action. A vision without daily steps behind it will eventually become a source of shame, not inspiration. The mind craves purpose, not fantasy. You don't need to have it all figured out, but you do need to define where you're going and why it matters. That clarity sharpens your focus, it clears away the noise, and it gives your habits a reason to exist. Without that purpose anchoring your effort, even the best routines will feel hollow and forced. Your identity is built on what you practice, not just what you promise. And when your practices are aligned with a clearly defined vision, your life begins to gather momentum. Not because it's easy, but because it's aligned. The Stoics remind us that while you cannot control every outcome, you can control the direction of your effort. That is the difference between dreaming and deciding. When you decide what kind of person you want to become and begin to embody that person through your daily behavior, you create a path that feels honest. This is not about pretending to be someone else. It's about becoming more of who you are at your core. Focused, disciplined, intentional. Vision doesn't have to be loud or complex. The most powerful visions are often simple. To live with integrity, to create something meaningful, to build a life rooted in strength and peace. But simplicity is not passivity. Simplicity requires clarity. And clarity demands that you stop hiding behind distractions and start facing the reality of your choices. You cannot say you want peace while continuing to feed chaos. You cannot say you value growth while giving your best energy to what drains you. Your vision must be real enough to shape your calendar, to influence your focus, to show up in your discipline habits and in your emotional self-control. That's when it stops being a wish and becomes a direction. The difference between those who change their lives and those who don't is not the quality of their dreams, but the consistency of their actions. Real transformation is quiet. It happens in moments when you choose to do what's hard instead of what's easy. It's the decision to train your willpower step by step, to act with purpose, not emotion, and to stay the course even when the results are invisible. You won't always feel inspired, but you don't need inspiration when you have clarity. That's why your vision must be visible to you, written down, reflected on, reviewed often, so that when your motivation fades, your direction doesn't. And when you build discipline around that vision, even small actions begin to take on weight. Reading becomes reflection. Routines become rituals. Stillness becomes strategy. Vision without action is a trap. It convinces you that you're becoming, when in truth, you're just imagining. Don't fall for that. Don't let your dream become a placeholder for the life you're meant to create. Define it, then act on it. One small step today, another tomorrow. That's how real change begins. Not through fantasy, but through consistent movement in the direction of something real. 3. Surround yourself with growth, not noise. Your environment is never neutral. It either nurtures your growth or quietly numbs it. And often, what holds you back isn't a lack of motivation or discipline, but the voices around you shaping your inner dialogue without you noticing. When you spend your days surrounded by people who normalize negativity, sarcasm, distraction, or fear-based thinking, you begin to absorb it like background static. It becomes the default noise in your mind, dulling your vision, weakening your willpower, and subtly lowering your standards. Stoicism teaches us that we must guard our mental space as carefully as we guard our most valued possessions. And that starts by choosing the company we keep with intention. While you cannot always control who crosses your path, you can control who gains access to your energy. Just as you would not allow toxic substances into your body, you should not allow toxic energy to shape your thoughts. If you want to live with discipline, focus, and emotional self-control, then you must protect your environment with the same level of precision. True growth requires clarity, and clarity cannot thrive in chaos. Every conversation, every interaction, every social feed you scroll through either strengthens your mindset or scatters it. The problem isn't just the noise, it's the confusion it causes. When you're surrounded by people who mock ambition, minimize discipline, or glorify emotional drama, it becomes harder to hold on to your standard. You begin to doubt your direction, to question your values, and to unconsciously mirror what feels normal. That's why surrounding yourself with growth isn't just a nice idea. It's a necessity. Growth happens in spaces where you are reminded of your potential, where consistency is encouraged, and where setbacks are treated as lessons, not final judgments. It happens in communities that respect your boundaries, challenge your excuses, and reflect the kind of life you're building, not the one you're trying to escape. The more time you spend in environments that align with your vision, the easier it becomes to stay grounded in your personal priorities and emotional self-ownership. This is not about seeking validation. It's about protecting momentum. Because even the most disciplined person will eventually be worn down if constantly surrounded by criticism, chaos, or distraction. So audit your circle. Pay attention to how you feel after spending time with certain people. Do they leave you sharper, calmer, more focused? Or do they leave you scattered, agitated, and unclear? If your goal is to take control of your life and lead it with purpose, then that choice must extend to your surroundings. And that includes not just people, but inputs. What you read, what you listen to, what you watch, what you dwell on. These things shape your internal environment, and your internal environment becomes the foundation for your external decisions. You don't have to cut people off in dramatic ways, but you do have to decide who gets your full attention and who gets limited access. Not everyone deserves a front row seat to your growth. The more you curate your environment to reflect who you're becoming, not who you used to be, the more effortless your discipline becomes. This is how identity is reinforced, not just through action, but through alignment. Growth thrives in places of respect, stillness, and quiet accountability. So if you feel stuck, don't just look inward, look around. Because sometimes the biggest change you can make isn't internal, it's environmental. And once you make that shift, you'll realize you were never unmotivated. You were just surrounded by noise. Replace it with growth, and everything starts to move. 4. You don't need more time. You need clear priorities. The real problem isn't that you lack time, it's that your time lacks purpose. Most people aren't drowning in responsibilities because they have too much to do, but because they've never defined what matters. When your priorities are unclear, everything feels urgent. Every notification becomes a crisis, every invitation a commitment, and every task feels equally important. But that's an illusion created by distraction, not discipline. The truth is, time has always been equal. What changes everything is how you allocate it. And that begins by being brutally honest with yourself about what deserves your full attention. In a world designed to keep you reactive, clarity is a radical act. It requires stepping back and asking, what do I truly value, and does my day reflect that? The Stoics taught that we must know what is within our control and act accordingly. And one of the few things fully within your control is how you spend your energy. If your days are filled with scrolling, pleasing, comparing, reacting, it's not a time issue, it's a direction issue. Discipline doesn't start in your calendar, it starts in your mind. You must stop measuring your productivity by how busy you are and start measuring it by how aligned you are. Alignment doesn't mean doing more, it means doing what matters with focus and consistency. It means making hard decisions about what to say no to, not because those things are bad, but because they don't lead you where you've said you want to go. Every moment you give away to low-value tasks is a moment you steal from your future self. And your future is not something that magically arrives. It's built with the bricks of your present attention. The most disciplined people aren't the ones who fill every hour with effort. They are the ones who build invisible boundaries around what matters most. Their lives feel grounded, not because they're perfect, but because they've stopped letting noise direct their energy. You don't need to overhaul your schedule. You just need to stop negotiating with distractions. You don't need another productivity app. You need personal integrity, the kind that honors your values in your daily choices. If you say your health matters, it must show up in how you move, eat, and sleep. If you say growth matters, it must live in how you read, reflect, and challenge yourself. If you say your relationships matter, they must be present in your time, not just your thoughts. Otherwise, those words are just comforting lies. Clarity brings accountability. And accountability brings power, the kind that lets you say no without guilt and yes without hesitation. The power to prioritize is the power to protect your peace. And when your peace is protected, your discipline deepens. You move from reacting to responding, from chaos to structure, from wishful thinking to intentional living. Most people think they need more time to fix their life, but what they need is to stop wasting the time they already have on things that don't align with who they want to become. The question is not, do I have enough time, but am I using my time to build the person I've decided to be? When you answer that with honesty and act on it with courage, everything begins to shift. The life you want is not on the other side of a hustle. It's on the other side of focus. And the clarity to focus begins with choosing your priorities and letting them choose your day. 5. Small choices create big shifts. The turning points in your life rarely announce themselves with dramatic clarity. They show up quietly in how you respond when things don't go your way, in what you choose to do when no one is watching, and in the small decisions you repeat every single day. The mistake most people make is assuming that change only happens through grand actions or perfect timing. But in reality, it is the result of invisible discipline applied consistently over time. You don't need a life-altering breakthrough to become who you're meant to be. What you need is to take ownership of the moments most people overlook, the ones that seem too small to matter, but shape everything about who you become. The Stoics understood this deeply. They taught that character is built not in speeches or intentions, but in daily actions, especially in adversity. When you are rejected, do you internalize failure or choose growth? When you're tired, do you default to comfort or hold the line with quiet strength? These choices are not just habits, they are signals to your mind about what kind of life you are leading. Your mind remembers repetition more than intensity. And that's why small, intentional choices are so powerful, because they build identity without requiring permission from motivation. You don't need to feel ready to begin. You need to begin to feel ready. And that readiness is built every time you get up early, even when your bed feels like a sanctuary of escape. It's reinforced every time you speak to yourself with truth rather than shame. It's confirmed every time you choose to focus instead of scroll, to act instead of overthink, to reflect instead of react. These are the habits that sharpen mental clarity, build emotional self-control, and form the foundation for personal growth. When you build momentum in the small things, you start to realize that progress isn't something that visits you, it's something you cultivate. And the more you cultivate it, the less dependent you become on external validation. The shift is subtle but life-changing. You move from being someone who reacts to circumstances to someone who creates direction from within. Most people wait for motivation. They wait for the right mood, the right energy, the right sign. But the life you want doesn't come through waiting. It's carved out of ordinary minutes that you use with extraordinary purpose. So ask yourself what you do when you wake up, how you structure your time, and what kind of self-talk you allow in. These are the roots of transformation. Not flashy, not fast, but undeniably powerful. If you want to build self-discipline, stop focusing on willpower and start focusing on a pattern. Make small, sustainable choices that reflect who you want to become. Do them with consistency, not intensity, and allow time to do its work. The truth is, nothing changes until your choices change. Not your mindset, not your productivity, not your future. But once those small shifts begin, once you take control of your habits, your thoughts, and your emotional responses, everything else starts to align. This is the path of real strength. It's not loud or dramatic. It doesn't need to be. Because when you learn to make small decisions that honor your priorities, you gain something rare. The ability to change your life without waiting for the world to change first. That is where the unshakable power lives. Not in what you do occasionally, but in what you do consistently. 6. Discipline is freedom in disguise. Most people hear the word discipline and think of restriction, rigidity, or punishment. But that misunderstanding is what keeps them stuck in cycles of procrastination, emotional volatility, and inconsistent effort. The truth is, discipline is not the enemy of freedom. It is the doorway to it. Real freedom doesn't come from doing whatever you feel like. It comes from knowing that your life is moving in the direction you've chosen, even when your emotions try to pull you off course. Discipline is the skill of honoring what you've committed to long after the initial excitement has faded. And this isn't about perfection. It's about consistency. When you stop chasing comfort and start choosing structure, you start to build momentum, and momentum is what makes change sustainable. The Stoics taught that we must live by principles, not by feelings. They knew that feelings are fleeting, unreliable, and often rooted in fear or avoidance. But discipline is rooted in clarity, the kind of clarity that knows what matters and is willing to protect it, even when no one is watching. When you wake up and follow through on your routines, when you stay grounded during conflict, when you choose focus over distraction, you're not being rigid, you're reclaiming control. You're training your mind to act with purpose, not impulse. And the more you do this, the more you realize how powerful daily habits are. Small acts done repeatedly are how you build mental toughness, emotional self-control, and long-term identity shifts. This is where personal freedom grows, in quiet, private victories. You don't need to wait until you feel ready. You need to train yourself to act anyway. Because if you only move when it's easy, you'll live at the mercy of your moods. But when you act based on values and structure your life around your highest priorities, you begin to see that discipline is not the heavy burden you once feared. It's the system that protects your energy, your goals, and your peace of mind. Most people fail not because they lack ambition, but because they never learned how to keep promises to themselves. They start, stop, restart, and wonder why they don't trust their momentum. But discipline builds that trust. Every time you show up when it's hard, every time you say no to something shallow to say yes to something deeper, you're reminding yourself that your word holds weight. And that is where self-respect is born. Not in how others view you, but in how consistently you show up for yourself. Discipline is also how you quiet the noise. When you know what matters, you stop needing to explain yourself. You don't chase trends or external approval because you're anchored in something stronger, identity through daily action. You begin to feel less anxious because your focus isn't scattered. You're not spinning your wheels in 1,000 directions. You're building something solid, brick by brick, habit by habit. Over time, that structure becomes your strength. It becomes a kind of internal stillness that allows you to move through chaos without losing yourself. That is real freedom, not the freedom to escape responsibility, but the freedom to handle it with grace. You don't have to be the most talented, the most confident, or even the most motivated. You just have to be disciplined enough to keep going when no one's clapping. That's where the shift happens. That's when the future starts to change. And that's why discipline, when practiced daily, is never a limitation. It's a declaration. A quiet, consistent declaration that says, I'm building something that matters, and I refuse to abandon it just because it's hard. 7. Speak as the person you want to become. Your words are not just sounds you release into the world. They are bricks in the structure of your identity. Every sentence you speak is a reflection of who you believe you are and who you're becoming. If you constantly speak in limitation, doubt, or negativity, you're reinforcing a version of yourself that is reactive and powerless. But when you speak with clarity, direction, and intention, you begin to shift not just how others perceive you, but how you perceive yourself. The Stoics believed that speech should be purposeful, not performative. To them, words were not weapons or decorations, but tools for self-mastery and discipline. And this remains true today. If you want to live with emotional self-control, daily discipline, and internal stability, you must begin by watching your words. Because language, whether whispered or shouted, plants seeds. And those seeds grow into habits of thought, and eventually into patterns of behavior. Speaking without intention creates confusion in your environment, in your relationships, and especially in your mind. If you speak complaints all day, you program your mind to scan for what's wrong. If you speak self-doubt, you reinforce an identity rooted in fear. But if you speak with purpose, even in uncertainty, you strengthen your ability to act with courage. This isn't about pretending or using false positivity. It's about aligning your speech with the discipline you're building and the mindset you want to protect. When you say, I can't do this, your brain begins to believe it. When you say, this is hard, but I'll figure it out, your brain gets to work looking for solutions. Words are the first act of leadership, not over others, but over yourself. If you're training your willpower, speak like someone who finishes what they start. If you want to build consistency, Speak about your efforts, not just your intentions. And when you fall short, speak with accountability, not excuses. This kind of language doesn't just elevate your behavior, it sharpens your mental toughness and keeps your integrity intact. Moreover, the way you speak shapes your environment. People respond not just to what you say, but to how it makes them feel. If your words create clarity and calm, people trust you more. If your words create tension or noise, even unintentionally, it adds to the chaos you're trying to manage. Learning to speak less, but with more weight, is a mark of wisdom. Silence, when used deliberately, is more powerful than shallow noise. The more grounded you become, the more your speech reflects stability. You don't need to raise your voice to be powerful. You need to align your words with your values, not your moods. Because moods pass, but your words linger. They echo in your relationships, in your routines, in your mind long after they're spoken. So use them like a craftsman uses a chisel, precisely, deliberately, and with long-term intention. And if you want to change how you see yourself, start by changing how you speak to yourself. Speak to your potential, not your pain. Speak to your values, not your excuses. Speak to your vision, not your fears. Every time you do, you reinforce the belief that you are no longer reacting to life, you are responding to it. That is the difference between drifting and direction, between noise and presence, between who you were and who you're becoming. And it all begins with your voice, not the loudness of it, but the clarity behind it. Speak as the person you want to become, and slowly, powerfully, that's exactly who you will grow into. The truth is, your life won't change by chance. It changes by daily action, by self-discipline, and by choosing to own every decision you make. Whether it's building better habits, taking control of your time, or training your mindset to focus with clarity, transformation begins the moment you stop waiting and start becoming. Remember, small, consistent choices, not big emotional moments, shape the person you are becoming. So reflect on what resonated most with you today and begin applying just one principle. Over time, those quiet efforts build a powerful foundation. If this message connected with you, don't forget to like the video and subscribe for more content on intentional living and powerful mindset habits. Most importantly, share your story in the comments below. Tell us how you're choosing to take control of your life, starting today. Your voice might be the encouragement someone else needs to make their shift.